Hello to everyone. In this second part of lesson number 3, we will see how to develop a portrait. We will go together in the development process to set up the environment, to create the first portrait, using different approach to create the portrait. You have to, before to start, you have to download the LiveRay portal. We are using the LiveRay 6.1 version. You have to download the plugin SDK for that version. You have to download both in your computer, put in some directory, and in this case I have already downloaded the two package. One is the SDK, the other is the Tomcat version of the LiveRay portal. We use LiveRay Tomcat because we will use to develop the Eclipse with the LiveRay IDE. So you have to download the Eclipse with LiveRay IDE from the LiveRay website, or you can download Eclipse from wherever you want, or you can use also the one installed with your distribution, and then add the LiveRay plugin. You can find the download of LiveRay plugin from the LiveRay website. So when you have downloaded the LiveRay portal, you can unzip the file and you can start the LiveRay for the because this is a working version of LiveRay with Tomcat. Then you have to unzip the LiveRay plugin SDK. And you have to set up Eclipse. So we start from the point where you have Eclipse with LiveRay IDE on board. I start Eclipse. You have Eclipse with LiveRay IDE, and you have these two packages already installed. So I start Eclipse with a clean workspace. The time to start, and we will. This is Eclipse. I have already installed everything, so I have to set up. I have to add the LiveRay. So you add the LiveRay server. If the Eclipse with the LiveRay plugin is installed correctly, when you go to when you go to File, New, Other, you should see the LiveRay group. So first of all, this means the plugin, the LiveRay IDE is correctly installed. We need to add a server as first thing. The server has to be of LiveRay. Okay. In our case, I remember we are using LiveRay 6.1. That is not the last version, but is the one we are based all our tools. So you have to use this one. It is on the local host. You have to go to the path where it is installed. Okay, I have this here. Okay, sorry. Okay, you can give a name. Okay, this will create your LiveRay server. So you can use this to check your portrait during the development process, because this is a LiveRay instance running on your machine. Then you have to set up the LiveRay SDK. For this, you go to LiveRay, and so you have in the preference page, you have the LiveRay group. You have the to configure the LiveRay plugin SDK. We add a new plugin. Just go to the location. I have it here. Okay. Okay. So in this way, I have the SDK, the LiveRay server configured. At this point, we can start to create our first portrait. That is the topic of this course. The first part is just to set up the Eclipse with the IDE in order to run, to create the portrait and you run with your development. So in order to start your first portrait, you have to go to New, file new, then select the life group. Okay, here you have many kind of projects you can create. You have hook, JSF, layout, plugin, portrait, and so on. All of them are different kind of plugin you can develop for LiveRay Portal framework. What are interested for now is the portrait project. The portrait is the building block of the portal I show in the part 1 of this lesson. So it's the components we will go to develop. Skip for now the LiveRay hook and the layout template. The other are all portrait, but they differ for the framework they are using. For example, we have LiveRay Badin portrait because it is based on Badin framework. You have JSF portrait because the portrait you will create is based on JServerface technology, and so on. We will start with the simplest LiveRay portrait for now. So we choose this one, LiveRay portrait. Go ahead. Okay. LiveRay plugin project. Okay. We will put the project name. Test. Okay. So we have the display name of the portrait. For now, I put the same. We will not include symbol code. Okay. Go ahead. For now, just leave the LiveRay MVC because the other two will not see. This will create the portrait using the LiveRay SDK. Okay, we have to switch to the LiveRay perspective. So this is just a different way of organization of tab inside Eclipse. Okay. Now we can create the first portrait for this project. As I said, there are many ways to build a portrait. I will show you two different kinds of portraits we can create. We will show the generic portrait and the LiveRay MC portrait. We will start with the generic portrait first, and then we will move to the MVC portrait. So we select the superclass in generic portrait. Okay, we can give as package Sci-GaIA test. Okay, let's go ahead. This is the folder where we can create the JSP files. Okay, we have to give a name for the portrait. I call this generic portrait test. Here are the mode we will create for the portrait, because the portrait can be associated with different view inside the portal. The default one is the view. This is enabled. Then you can add an app mode where where you can show some app online app for the portrait. That mode is just to configure preferences for the portrait and so on. Okay, that everything is okay. We can set the icon, CSS for the file, and so on. For now, we leave all of this as shown here. This the display category is where the portrait will be shown inside the left ray menu when you want to add the portrait. For now, we put Sci-GaIA. So we will create a menu Sci-GaIA inside the list of portrait. And that's all. Okay. Okay, we can leave here everything because we are asking just to create the init method and the doview method. These are needed in order to create the portrait. Okay, so this is our first portrait. What do the code of the portrait inside Eclipse? Okay, I show you our new portrait. This extends the generic portrait as I explained before. We have two methods. We have the init method, that is the initialization of the portrait. This is called during the deploy of the portrait. And then we have the doView method. This is called every time the portrait is loaded on a page. So every time you access a page where the portrait is loaded, this is called. So this implements a render phase of the portrait. What do this doView? In this case, is called the method include. This is something created by the Eclipse. Is the template Eclipse used to create this portrait. This is not requested. You can just move this code of the include inside the doView. It's okay. It depends on how you want to build the generic portrait. Because the doView is a method you have to implement. But in this case, it's called the include. What the include do is just to send the control to a JSP file that is configured in the portal XML file. Because when you create a portrait, you have several XML files. I'll show you the file. Everything is created inside the directory called the doc.root in your project. This is a standard web archive package. So you have the webinf and the metainf directory. Inside the webinf, you have all the XML file describing that this project is a portrait. You have the portrait XML, that is the standard file descriptor for the portrait, as defined by the portrait standard. And in this file, you have the portrait, the description of the portrait that starts from here. And in this description, you have to write the portrait name. You have to write the class implementing the portrait as some parameter. We have only one parameter in this case, that is this view template. View template has a path to a JSP file to call during the execution of the render phase. Okay, how to send the control to the JSP file is here. You have to call the dispatcher of the request. You have to add to the dispatcher the JSP file. Okay, this line. Okay, this line just get the dispatcher from the context, and then you have to include the render request and the render response to the dispatch. Of course, the path has to be the path to the file where you want to dispatch the next step. If I run this portrait, what happens is that every time I load this portrait, the doView will call this include, and the control will go to the view JSP file that is configured here. And this file show. I open the file. It's HTML JSP file is here. Just this is the generic portrait. So it's just a render phase where you see with some text. Okay, before to run the portrait, I show you the other XML file, because we have seen the portrait XML describe all the details of the portrait. Then you have other file describing the portrait. but the other are specific for LiFray. So you have a LiFray portrait file that is an extension of the portrait XML with additional information. In this case, as you can see in the file, you have the icon to show in the portrait. You have this either portrait HSS, that is a file, HSS file to load with the portrait. You can add a JavaScript file. You can create a CSS class wrapper for your portrait, so you can create custom CSS class applied only to your portrait. You have a role mapper of the role inside the portrait XML file to the role inside the LiFray, and so on. There are a lot of attributes you can specify for the specific for LiFray. You can find the list in the LiFray documentation. This is the basic one created by LiFray. Then the other important file is the LiFray display XML. This is very simple. This said that this portrait go to the category Sci-GaIA. I wrote this during the portrait creation. The name of the portrait in this category has this ID. The ID is read from the portrait XML file. This generic portrait test is here. It's the portrait name of the portrait XML. Last file from LiFray is the LiFray plugin properties, package properties. This file show you, okay, source here. Okay, this just describes the package for LiFray. You can write here some information like the author, the version, and so on. You can have a look inside the LiFray portal just to see which version is the package and so on. Additionally, you can write something for the LiFray. For example, if you need some specific library from LiFray provided by LiFray, you want that when you install the package, this library has to be included with your package. There is an option to add this library and some other specific option for LiFray. For now, we leave these files as they are created by LiFray. So this is our first portrait. We will add this portrait in our server, and then we will start the server. Okay, we start the server. Okay, we will start the server. I open a browser. It's still loading. Not ready. It takes some time to start the server. Okay, now it started. Just check. The default installation run on port 8080. The server is already configured, but the first time you start the LiFray portal, you will ask to create an account. You have to provide the password, passphrase, and so on for the administration page. This is already configured. So I go sign in. Okay, I will create a new page where we can Sci-GaIA. Okay, the new page should be empty. I will add, you can add portrait here, go to more. Okay, I have already some portrait from Sci-GaIA, but it's different from the one we have developed. If we see the left-right display, you see that the category name is, okay, there is a misspelling, but there's no problem. So if I deploy the portrait, I should find a new category, Sci-GaIA, even there is a misspelled letter, and we have to find this portrait. So let's go to deploy the portrait. Okay. You have to go to server and remove. We add Sci-GaIA. Test portrait. Okay. If I open, it's here. Okay, after deployed the portal, if I go to add more, I should find the new, okay, it's here, because you see there is an E, and it is our generic portrait. So I can add, okay, let's change the layout so we have the full page. Okay, layout, we go to single column. Okay, this is our generic portrait, and this is the text we have in our portrait. If you go to these tools, you can see you have the configuration and look and feel. If you add the other mode, like the edit mode, help mode I showed during the creation of the portrait, you will find here the other mode. You will find the help and the edit. But we will see this in another lesson number 5, I guess, and number 4. Okay, so this is the basic for the portrait. Actually, the portrait is doing nothing. If you want to add something in the portrait, you want to create some action, so you have to add the form, you have to create something, you want to process this one, you can use a HTML tag to create a form here. Form. You have to define where to submit. Okay, just I give a very brief example here for the generic portrait, and then we will go in more detail for the MVC portrait using the MVC Life-Ray framework. So what you have to do here is just to write any kind of input tag. Give name. Is like every HTML page. I give you some name. Okay. I'll show you just an example where we have an input field in the view page, and we want to associate some action to this view. What we have to do is create a simple form, But in this form, we need to add something in order to work. The first thing is to access the process action of the generic portlet, where the action phase is running. Because every time I load the page, I go to the render phase, and this is made by the doView. In order to access the action, I need a specific link for the portlet in order to trigger this event. How do you go to this specific phase? You have to create the URL, an ad hoc URL. To create this ad hoc URL, the portlet standard provides some special tag, because you have the tag lib for the portlet. This is the URI of the tag lib. When you create this with this tag lib, you can you have several portlet tag where you are able to use the tag to create this specific URL. Plus, you have the tag to create some special object inside the page that you can use to retrieve information of the portlet tag. In case to create this, we use with URL portlet tag. We have to associate this with the variable. Okay, just call action bar. Okay, this is just the name of a variable we use inside the GSP. So calling this variable, I can get access to the URL to use for this this form. So this tag will create this action URL. Saving this URL. Yeah, I can call this action bar. So in this way, we create the form. The form will send the information inside the input field to this URL using the post method, and we'll create the the action phase. Another thing to do is to add the namespace for the parameter, because when you submit these parameters, only the portlet associated with this view have to retrieve the information. To avoid conflict between different portlets, because the same parameter could be read by other portlet interface, you have to add a namespace specific for the portlet. For this, we can use again the portlet tag. We have the portlet namespace tag. So I delete the name. Okay. Okay. So you have to add the portlet namespace inside just together with the name of the field you want. We see other tags that allow you to simplify this process, because they will automatically insert the namespace of the portlet inside the field. You will see this in lesson number 4. But for now, using the standard tag, you have to add this. Okay. So now you have the form. If we redeploy the portlet, just go to the server area, just to redeploy, clicking on the sides, in this case Sci-GaIA test portlet project, just redeploy. If we load the page, you see the field. If go to the code, okay, this is the form. This is the URL for the action here. You have not to remember how to create this, because it's the tag performing this. The form has the namespace of the portlet before the information. Of course, in the process action, the namespace is automatically removed from the name, so you have not to use the namespace inside the process action. So returning to our generic, so if you want to process this information, you have to go to the portrait, in this case the Java code of the portrait. Is here on top. This is our new portrait. In order to process this information, we have to extend the process action. You override the process action. In the process action, I will get the information coming from the JSP file. Just to give an example, we will retrieve the information and put inside the text shown on top of the page. So in order to do this, I'll give the super. Even I don't think there is an action associated with the portrait. Then I have to retrieve the text from the input field. String input, I call input text. There is a util class from left-right to retrieve the information from the action request or the render request or whatever requests you have. There are overloading for different kind of requests. I call it request. Okay, I get the param here is test input. Okay, I can put a default value here. Okay, in this way I can retrieve the information from the request. I want to give this to the render phase in order to show on the page. So I add to the action response. The response is response. Input. What's happened is that the requests contain the information coming from the process from the form for the process action. I process this information, then I add something to the response. On the response, in this case, we set the parameter for the request on the render request phase. So during the render request, both on the method here on the doView or on the Vue.jsp, I can access the parameter retrieved from the render parameters. These are retrieved or from the parameter set by the process action or parameter sent directly to the render phase. Okay, so in this process action, we have to retrieve the information coming from the web page, from the form. We are retrieving this using this paramutil. We can elaborate on this information. In this case, we are doing nothing. We are just getting the value we get from this field, and then we set this information in the response using the set render parameter. We set this information in the request for the render phase. So during the render phase that we have here in the doView method, we can retrieve this from the render request. We can retrieve the parameter we set in the action phase. This is a way to pass information from the action to the render. At the same time, you can retrieve this information also from the Vue.jsp, because the Vue.jsp is executed in the context of the render phase. So the Vue.jsp can access this information. We will add this from here because we have the final object that allow to get the all the object to retrieve information from the information from for the portrait. So we get this kind of object are created. This object render request, render response, request, request, and so on are created by this portrait define object. So we go to the render request. Okay. Yep. String text. We have we use the param util. Render request. The name of the parameter we provide is here. Input. And the default value. No. In view mode. Was just to give some space. I give some space. So, okay, in this case, in the Vue.jsp, I should see. Okay, no value because there is no render phase. Because in the render phase, no one has. In the render phase, this parameter is empty. This is filled only after the action. So, there is some error. Just go to the to see in this case the problem. Just go to the console. We're seeing that the web page has a form. The form submit to the action URL. In the action URL, we do some processing of the information and then send something for the render phase. This is how the generic portrait works. So you need the process action and the do in order to perform any kind of activity for the portrait. This is the first type of portrait. So this is the basic for any kind of portrait. Basic portrait, but is the one more used and more supported by Liferay, because it's an extension of the generic portrait where you can see you can use some interesting features and define this process. So we'll try to quickly do the same on the MVC portrait. We can you can create a new project, or we can add the portrait on the same project, because a single project can have multiple portraits. This is important because in some cases portraits are requested to share the same libraries, share some resources. So in this case, it's good approach to put everything inside a single WAR application. So we can try to add another portrait. In order to add another portrait, just go to New. You should see a Liferay portrait. Just add a new Liferay portrait inside the same portrait plugin project. That's okay. We can leave the source folder the same. We can have the same class path. Sci-GaIA.test. We call with the defender name, of course. MVC portrait. In this case, we change the superclass. We use the MVC portrait. This is the one you have to use in order to run an MVC-based portrait. The portrait name my MVC. That's okay. We can leave here all the information. This is almost the same as we did for the other. You have additional life-ray portrait mode that we will not show in this lesson. We will see in the next lesson. For now, just skip this. We have the JSP folder where the JSP file go. Okay, these are the additional information for the portrait. We add this in the same category as before. Okay, these are all the standard category for. We put on the same as the previous portrait. Okay, just generate the portrait. This is the class for your portrait. As you can see, there is no method because the MVC portrait already implemented the most important method, that is the method for the render face. If you go to the portrait XML, you have the new portrait added here. You can add how many portraits you need. We have the second portrait here, that is the portrait based on MVC. This file is almost the same as the previous file. You have your portrait class, you have the portrait name, display name, you have the same init parameter. The life-ray portrait also doesn't change too much. You have another portrait defined here with the same kind of information. So from the point of view of the XML file, there is no too much difference. We have the same portrait display, but now we have two portraits here. The information here is collected by life-ray portrait because the display name is okay in the portrait. So the display name is the one shown then on the life-ray page. Additionally, you have a new view file. We go to the source code. The view file associated is HTML MyMVC view JVC. Okay, this is the new view file. It's almost the same. Everything looks almost the same, but the portrait, the class implementing the portrait, is not anymore implementing the generic portrait, but the MVC portrait, and there is no default method. Because using the MVC, you almost don't need the render method. You need only some method for the process action. So if I go to the portal, I don't want to send. We add another page. Sorry, Gaia MVC. I change the layout. Just one column. When I go to add, I should have two portraits. I add my MVC. It's almost the same. There is not much difference. Changes how the portrait work internally. The generic portrait has not any render view. Every time I go to the generic portrait, it is called the page associated with the initial parameter view template, or I can change this with the MVC path. So I can have two files, and according to the parameter I give, I can change the view. Just to give an example, I add a new view here. I add a new page. Second view, JSP. Okay, I've created a second page. Yeah, just to be, I need just to have the portrait object, just to have all the information for the portrait. Even if for static content I don't need this, but I already added just to be, because I'm sure I will use it later. I add something, just a title. This is so to move from one page to another page, I just add here a link to the other page. Second page. Okay, I want this a link to the other page on the view. So inside the portrait, I can move from one page to the other. I need to provide here the URL for the page showing the second URL page. In order to do this, I use the portrait tag, but instead of action URL, I go to render URL. I put in a variable so I can use second page. Okay, so in this case I have the variable here containing this link I put here. But this link go to the page, to the render page without any change. In order to add this page view change, I have to add a new parameter. As value, I have to put the path to my second page. I have to put the path to the second page. Second view.jsp. I have to provide an MVC path because the MVC portrait will try to follow the link according to some variable. So the MVC path is one of the first variable you check for a value. If this is not selected, then go to the other variable. At the end, we call the view template page that is defined in the portrait init. But since I am here writing the different paths, then when I go to this link, I should go to the other page. Just do a test. I have the link to the second page. I have to write, okay, this is my second page is right here. This is my second page. So just to change this information, I don't need to write render view or I do view or whatever, because the MVC portrait is responsible for this. Another important change is that when I add an action URL, I will not go to the process action, or at least I go to the process action, but this process action is already implemented. This will implement a switch where, according to some variable I provide, a different method is called. Just we do very quickly the same thing we did with the other portrait. We create in the second view a form that is shown on the first page. Just go to the, I take the other view, I will copy here what we already have done. I'm copying the portrait action and the form very quickly. I write here in my second view. So the form is almost the same. I have to add something specific for the MVC portrait. I have to write here a name. I can write whatever I want. Process input. This is the name of a method I have to implement in my MVC class to process this action URL. So go to the, I call process input. Go to the Java file. MVC portrait. So public void process input. I have to provide the action, request the action response. Request action response. Okay, so I have the process input that will perform an activity we have done in the process action. But in this case, every different form or every different action can go on a different method because I'm writing the name of the method. I do almost the same kind of activity just to get the parameter and then move to the render request. Just to be quicker, I'm copying from the other because we do the same stuff we already have seen. Okay. I will get the information on the Vue.jsp because since I'm not setting which file has to show, the render phase of the MVC port will call the basic file that is the Vue.jsp. So I can write here the same code we had to show the. Okay. See. I need to. Okay, I need to import the file, of course, the class path, the package, the file, the class file, in order to use like in any Java code. So we are in the Vue.jsp. We are writing the text we get from the second view during the form, submitted by the second view, saved by the my MVC portrait method. I write this here. Just to separate. This is the input. Okay. Let's have a look to see if it works. Now I am in the second page because when I do refresh, the URL is the render URL, including the MVC path information in the render URL. I have the form. If I write something here, this is my text. I should go to the MVC. This is my text. Here the link to go to the second page. So in this case, this uses a render URL where we change the page to show. This is a form of submitting some information to the action. Then I return to the render URL, to the render phase without specific MVC path, so I show the Vue.jsp because it's the default, but I include this information coming from the action phase. In this case, as you can see, I have some the development is easier because first of all, I don't need to have all the code in the process action to understand which form is submitted the input. I can have different methods. I don't need to manage the render phase. Just what I have to do is just to use a variable accessed by the render phase on my portrait to understand which page has to be loaded. So everything is can go to the JSP. It's easier to develop complex pages. So in this way, we have seen the generic portrait, the MVC portrait in the same project. You can see the difference between the two. For the next lesson, we will see only the MVC portrait. Last but not least, we create a symbol generic portrait, but in this case, the Maven archetype doesn't contain the left ray based XML file, so you have to add this. They are quite simple, so you can just create them or copy from a different portrait and configure the parameter. If you add the file, everything should go quickly. So you can use Maven to develop the left ray portrait and then deploy on the server. I will not go to the details of Maven because if you are used to Maven, and it's quite easy to generate, to go ahead. And if you are not used, just go to the SDK because it's the one we will show during the next presentation. But for complex work, I suggest to switch to Maven because it's easier to add the complex framework and so on using the POM file for dependencies. That's all for now for the portrait development. In the next lesson, you will see how to use how to create a complex UI widget in order to create some interface for the user, how to process this information, and so on. For the hands-on part, I will give you some exercise on the web of the Sci-GaIA web where you have to, it's quite simple, just to try to create a simple portrait, just to submit some input field, to process the field, to write something on the output. Quite easy, just to replace what we have done here live on my computer. That's all. Thank you.